today is a special day for me, and I hope Southwest Florida, because we have a great man in our studio today. And I'm not just BSing there. It's the truth. And if anybody knows you, like a lot of people do, they know how special you are to Southwest Florida. And I mean that. And people that know you, there's nobody I've met has ever said anything negative about Brian Rist. And I want to say thank you for coming in. This is Let's Talk Southwest Florida podcast. And we have a special guest, Brian Rist, today. He's the founder of StormSmart.
Correct.
That's an incredible story, and we're going to get into that. But I think what really is so special about you is your philanthropy and what you do for Southwest Florida. And, you know, you've been such a success in business. And again, we're going to talk about that. But it doesn't stop for you. And giving is a big part of what you do.
So here's the problem. And first of all, Mike, it's an honor to be here. And we've been friends for a long time, and I'm very proud to be part of this whole thing. But I always concern myself when you start with like an intro like that, it just goes downhill because it just starts that way. You know, life's been very good to me, and I'm a very blessed person. And, you know, we learned a lot of lessons early on about giving back to society and now mainly Southwest Florida. And it really has worked out well. And it's kind of a message that I hope to share with a lot of people because you know this. When you give back, if you give back for the right reason and with the right heart, it seems to come back to you in crazy ways and in multiple ways. You know, not necessarily money. That's not really usually what it is. But different things happen. And I learned that lesson early on from different people that kind of helped me along the way. And so I'm very, very proud to be here today. And I'm very, very happy to be part of Southwest Florida and hear those things. You know, I just put my pants on the same way everybody else does. So it's kind of just that way.
That's what I say too.
Right.
We all put our pants on the same way. Right. But like you said, the more you give, the more you get. Yeah. And it doesn't mean money. It just means satisfaction and you know, just feeling like you're making a difference.
You know, when it's an old saying, it says when you do good things happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, the converse is also true, and I just never wanted to deal with a converse. So we always just tried to do good things, and it just seemed to work out, and it just made our life very, very nice. And so I'm happy to stay on that mission, and that's what really drives a lot of the other things that you're talking about.
Well, the giving is one thing. A lot of people talk about giving. They think it's just writing a check.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
No.
I mean, you write checks.
Yeah.
But you also give a lot of your time, not just to the Rist Family Foundation and what it is about, but also just, again, you're huge with FGCU. You know, and you're teaching kids.
You know, these people need money, obviously. So we're again blessed that we can help in that way. But really, I think we make a much bigger impact by being involved in things that we're involved with and spending time. But again, that's something that I'm convinced I'm getting more out of. You know, I don't think it's a secret that I teach as an adjunct professor out at FGCU. And I promise you that I believe I learn a lot more than I teach.
Yeah.
And that's the most amazing thing. When you stand in front of 30 college students and you talk about scaling businesses and AI and those types of things, those kids have much newer and better ideas than I have. So I learn more, I think, than I teach. So again, I win in that situation. I spent yesterday with some students going around Sanibel and showing them a little bit about Sanibel. And they were telling us stories about their way they live and the way they see things. And it just gives me a better perspective of what's going on. You go out to the university and you just get supercharged by the energy out there. So it's just a very cool thing. And it's something that I hope I can do for a lot longer.
And it's not just FGCU, it's our local community college too.
Well, actually, we're very, very lucky. We've been involved with FSW. We created a cybersecurity school there. We created a respiratory therapy program up there. We also are involved in a school in Massachusetts where we created a sustainability school and a business school up there. And so we're very involved in really 3 different colleges, and we do a little bit with the Oasis Middle School, and with their STEM program. But, you know, a long time ago, I figured out that the only real way to solve problems is through education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you want to solve crime, you have to teach people more about the value of life. You want to solve poverty, you got to teach people more about how to make money. You want to solve the food crisis, you teach people how to farm better and save food. So the way you really, I believe, solve problems is through education. So we do everything we can through the foundation and me personally on my time to try to support education and make it grow, because I truly believe that's the way we change things.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's an honor to have you in here, Brian. I mean,
My
it is.
pleasure. Yeah.
You're a mentor to me, and you're
Yeah.
a mentor to a lot of people, whether you
Thank
know
you.
it or not.
Yeah.
And we all need mentors. We all
Yeah.
need coaches.
Yeah.
And you're one of those coaches, and you're one of those mentors. So,
You know, I was fortunate enough to have, along the way, met several people who were mentors to me. I mean, you know, when I came to Southwest Florida, which was, more than 30 years ago, I was still kind of green and new and trying to figure out who I was. And I met a guy that we both know, Bruce Hoovis, and he did a lot to teach me about community involvement and business and marketing and sales and how to build a business. And I don't know that I would be where I am today if I hadn't met him along the way. And so, you know, it takes mentors to teach us. So then it's only really our role going forward that we should mentor others.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't take this stuff with you when you're done. I mean,
Yeah.
you might as well teach it now. What good is learning all these things if you don't share it with others? That's another reason why I spend time at FGCU, is that, you know, I feel like I have learned some things along the way in growing a business and being around. And if I don't share it with others and teach people on why I do what I do and we do what we do and why it's so important, then what good is it? I mean,
Yeah.
it really doesn't have any value. It made my life really, really nice, but I want to spread that message on to the next generation.
yeah. I saw one of your friends the other day. She's also been on this podcast, and I know you have a lot of respect for her. She's a special lady. I saw her book the other day. I read her book the other day. It's fantastic, and I posted it on social media. Great read. One of
Right.
Southwest Florida's great leaders, all
Yeah.
that. And that's Sandy Stillwell.
Right. She is. I mean, you probably don't meet a more dynamic person than Sandy. And she's, to me, is another mentor. And you see a person who's been extremely successful for a long period of time, but there's very rarely a board meeting or a civic event or a community engagement thing that I go to that you don't see her at.
Yeah.
I mean, she goes at it strong. She probably goes to, 6 or 7 meetings every day of the week,
Yeah.
6 days a week. And so, but that's what drives her too. I mean, she's an incredible lady. I don't know the exact number, but I think she owns like 7 restaurants.
Yeah.
Most people struggle to own one. She has 7 and then plus does all these other things for the community. So that's just a perfect example of doing that. And, you want to surround yourself with people like that. And she's just an inspiration. And I don't know of another person who gives back more than the Stillwells, Youngquist, all those people do. And so I'm always enamored to be around her and the things that do. What they do for the Children's Center is just incredible. For many things that what they do is just incredible. And I was proud to be part of her book and amongst those people. And but that she too, it's all about passing this information on to the next generation and helping kids. There's several students that we've mentored together, and that's just so amazing.
It's the love for Southwest Florida.
Right.
It really is.
It truly is. And you know this probably as well as anybody does. Southwest Florida, and in my case, in particular, the islands, are really just kind of magical.
Yeah.
Southwest Florida in general has been just great for me and my family. We started out on the East. My wife was born on the East Coast, and we lived over there for a number of years and tried to start a business over there, and it just didn't work out the way we wanted it to work out. I always say to people, I put 10 years back on my life by crossing the alley and coming back over here and coming over here and raising our family over here. And it really is, for me, there's just something about this area, this environment that is just so good and so important and so healthy that we certainly want to promote it. I'm not sitting here and thinking it's all popcorn and roses and things like that. There are challenges over here. There's no doubt about it. But life is full of challenges. But in general, this is paradise.
Yeah.
get out to the island, and it's a magical paradise, and it's just an amazing place. And, it too has its some issues, and perhaps we'll get to it later. But living in Southwest, I don't know. I could probably live any place in the world that I wanted to live.
Yeah.
But there's very, very little interest in me ever even leaving this place. I mean, we go up north to get out of the heat sometimes during the summer, but other than that, I love living in Southwest Florida. I love the people we meet. I love the businesses that are here. I love the beauty of the area, the water, the fishing, the golfing. All those things are just truly amazing, and I can't think of another place that I'd rather be.
So we got a list of questions here that we're going to go through, and we've touched on a lot of this stuff already. But one of the things that I say when we have a guest in here, it's really about the people and the places that make Southwest Florida so special. And you are one of those people, and we've talked about that. And we're going to go through some questions here about Brian Rist and your success and how you got started and things that you're involved with. We've touched on Sanibel and Captiva a little bit, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. We'll probably go back and forth with some of these questions the way we're talking, because it's just casual talk, and that's what it's about. It's real. So first question. You've become such a recognizable name here in Southwest Florida, but let's take it back to the beginning. What brought you to the area originally, and what made you stay?
That's a great question. Like many people, like most of us, I think, we would come here and vacation years and years ago and see, mostly we would vacation on Sanibel, and we'd see the beautiful beaches and the shops and all the things there, and thinking, my wife, mostly, that someday in this dream, we end up being able to live over here at some point, and it just seemed like a dream.
Yeah.
And then life got on the way, and we started working and all those things there. And we were living on the East Coast. She's from the East Coast, and we were living on the East Coast when Hurricane Andrew came. And I spent about 18 months in the recovery of Hurricane Andrew, and that's kind of what led us into the hurricane protection business. But after about 18 months being over there, we were raising a child who was then entering about the 5th grade, and we just knew that we didn't want to live in Southeast Florida anymore. Yeah. It just wasn't a great place to raise a child. And so we decided to venture across the alley. I originally had met my wife in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and we were driving around, and we ran into Cape Coral, Florida. I thought, well, wait a minute. We met in Cape Cod. Here's Cape Coral. Kind of made a lot of sense to come over here. Then I started looking for work because I needed a job, and I met the guy, Bruce Hoovis, I mentioned earlier, who owned Roll Safe, and we started a relationship, and I went to work for him. And that's really how we got involved in building Storm Smart and all those things there. But it started with a vacation, and then we came over here, and then we really fell in love with this area, and we just never left. And that was 30 years ago.
You mentioned that name, Roll Safe. That was the first time I've heard that name in a while.
Yeah, well, at one time in those days, it was a big company, and it was one of the biggest companies in that business. And he was a very dynamic marketing guy and did a lot of advertising, did a lot of philanthropic stuff. So I really was inspired by that. And we took Roll Safe from a medium-sized company and turned it into a much larger company. And it really was kind of the template for what then later became Storm Smart.
Storm Smart.
Yeah.
And we know that story, too.
Right,
Anybody that's been around here, Storm Smart, and still going.
Yeah.
Most people know you as the founder of Storm Smart. Can you walk us through the early days? How did the idea come about? And what was the moment you knew it was going to be something big? And we talked about that with Bruce Hoovis and all that, and Roll Safe now, too.
Right.
But
I mentioned to you that we were on the East Coast during Hurricane Andrew. And at that time, I was working for Overhead Door Corporation. And I spent 18 months in South Dade after Hurricane Andrew trying to figure out, obviously helping them with the recovery, but trying to figure out what caused all this damage. And I got to see all these people suffering for so long, and all the anxiety that came out of being devastated by Hurricane Andrew. And I just thought there just had to be a better way of doing things. And so what we eventually learned was what happened in a lot of the cases in Hurricane Andrew is the garage doors on those houses failed because they were not. Today, our garage doors are much more beefier and stronger than they were. Back then, a garage door was designed to like a 27 DPS, which is like what we have in an afternoon thunderstorm. So the first product we really developed and really brought to market was a garage door bracing system, which you hooked onto a garage door, and it took that weakest opening in the house and made it the strongest opening that it was. And so that was really the first product we brought to market, but we just knew there had to be a better way of protecting homes from hurricanes than putting plywood up on windows or putting these corrugated panels, metal panels up on windows. There just had to be a better way, and we started to experiment and work towards what else could be another solution to that problem. And eventually we came up with using a fabric. We pioneered the idea of using a fabric as a hurricane protection device. We figured out that, Kevlar is used in bulletproof vests. It could stop a bullet. Well, we didn't exactly use Kevlar, but we used a product very, very similar to Kevlar. And we decided to develop a product, and it worked, that it would stop the flying debris from breaking windows and going into houses. And that's really what kind of started that whole mechanism, made StormSmart different. Is we were a hurricane protection company, but we pioneered the idea of using a fabric as a hurricane protection product. And lo and behold, it caught on and became like the most popular product that is used in hurricane protection today. And it went through a lot of evolutions, but it really turned into something that was very special. I remember when we started StormSmart, we didn't have a lot of money. And the only way, I couldn't afford TV ads or newspaper ads. And so the only way that we really could drive our business and build our business is we kind of got involved with the people from emergency management and the people from the weather stations. And we would go to these hurricane seminars they'd have at different times, and we would be on stage and we'd teach people about how to protect their homes from hurricanes. And that's how we started our business. And we used to go around 2 or 3 nights a week during May, June, July, and offer this advice. And inevitably somebody would come up afterwards and say, "Hey, how do I protect my home?" And we would hope to sell some of our products. But I remember being at one seminar, and this lady came up, and she lived in Punta Gorda Isles. And this was when we were just starting marketing the Stormcatcher product. It wasn't the rolling shutters and all. It was just pieces of material. And we went out and we met with her. We eventually put some screens on her house. And a lot of her neighbors came around. Her husband came around. They thought we were nuts. They said, "Well, these guys are selling you snake oil. This is just fabric. What's that going to do in the storm?" And at that time, there wasn't a lot of most people didn't take hurricane protection all that seriously. We hadn't had a storm in a long time. Then, in about 2 weeks later, all of a sudden the newscasters started to come on, and they said, "Hey, there's a hurricane coming," and it eventually became Hurricane Charlie. And there wasn't a lot of people in her neighborhood who had hurricane protection, so they all came to her house, and they had a little hurricane party. And they were sitting on their back lanai, having drinks, smoking cigarettes, and doing all these things there. And eventually the storm comes, and she moves them all inside the house. And the storm comes, and it devastates the whole neighborhood in Punta Gorda Isles. It was one of the worst hit there was. But after the storm, they looked out to their lanai, and there was their ashtrays, and they still had cigarettes in their ashtrays. They had a clothesline, and they still had bathing suits on the clothesline. During the storm, one of the front windows did get hit by something, a coconut or a roof tile or something, and it broke that window, and everybody was scared to death. But in the end, nothing happened, and they were able to clean up with just a couple of paper towels. After I heard that story, I knew that we were onto something. You were onto something. And it never stopped after that.
Yeah. I think those are some of the things that you learn from these storms. And now the last few storms that we've had flooding. So now StormSmart's moving into the flood protection a little bit.
Yeah. We never thought, we worked for years figuring that if we just protected the openings of the house and kept the roof on, that's really what it would take to survive a hurricane. Well, then all of a sudden, Ian, Helene, Milton come, and it's not just flying debris and wind and hurricane force winds. It now is rising water and flood. And that turned out to be as devastating or maybe even more devastating than some of the flying debris that was around. So it became very critical that we started to get involved in more. I'm not totally involved in the company as much anymore, but that products were created that helped to protect homes against water.
Yeah.
So yes, you'll hear a lot about that, not just from StormSmart, but from a lot of places.
Yeah.
On ways to help mitigate water from coming into your house, because we learned with Ian, in Sanibel was annihilated almost. Helene, Milton was serious water problems. And so it doesn't even have to be a hurricane. You can have rising water in just a few storms. And so that's a problem. And so, we need to do it. Some people say you can elevate your house, and you can, but that's a very expensive and very tough way of doing it. If you're rebuilding or you're building a house, maybe, yes, you should elevate your home some. But what about all the houses that are on grade right now? We need to figure out a way to protect them. So there's this whole generation of flood barriers, and I think you'll see some new and innovative ways of protecting homes against floods coming up really soon.
Yeah.
But that's a big issue, and it's just coming to terms now. We're StormSmart is about ready to do a bunch of testing on the East Coast to really get some certifications on what these products will do and how to use them correctly, because it is a little bit of the wild, wild west right now, but they're working towards it, and soon the people in the building departments and the engineering will get a grasp on it, and they'll develop standards that say these are what kind of products you should use. This is how much water, because water is just a very amazing force, and it can blow a house over.
Yeah. Well, flood protection, like we've been talking about, it's been used for a long time up in the Northeast, Louisiana, New Orleans, the Keys, all that. So it's not like it's new, but it's just new for us.
Well, it's certainly rising waters is certainly not a Southwest Florida problem, unique to Southwest Florida problem. It is all over the place. We saw terrible floods in North Carolina. We've seen all kinds of different problems. Rising water is something we do have to do. So it isn't just a local problem. It's even a bigger problem, a wider spread problem than even hurricanes are, because it isn't just hurricanes, it's floods. It's winter snowstorms, draining out. So there is a lot of need for these products, but we just need to make sure that we create standards that so you know what you're getting and the consumer is protected. That's the trick right now. Is a lot of people are offering these products, but you just have to make sure that what they're offering really is truly flood protection.
Yes, because there are a lot of companies out there offering it right now, but is it really like you
and
said,
what kind of
standards?
engineering, what kind of data, what kind of testing is behind it? So you really need to know that. Now, I'll tell you that something's better than nothing.
Yeah,
pretty much always. But you really, if you're going to buy something, you really want to make sure that it's engineered and does it, because you could conceivably put a product on a house that could put you in some kind of danger, and you certainly don't want to do that.
Yeah. Next question. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced in getting StormSmart off the ground, and how did you navigate them?
Well,
because you've had a lot of great help. One of your big helpers is your right-hand person, Jamie.
Right, yeah. I'm very, very fortunate that I have an executive assistant who's been with me for a long time.
She's amazing.
And she's been really, really good. And she's helped both of our lives a lot. Like any company, in the beginning, money was always a huge problem.
Yeah.
It just like, and anyways, we didn't come into StormSmart with, bags of money or anything like that. So we had to kind of bootstrap our way through everything we did. Luckily, I was blessed with being somewhat of a salesperson, and we would just sell our way through the whole things. But we were undercapitalized a lot. And we at times didn't have enough money to even pay attention, never mind pay our bills. But you just get up every morning and you go to work. I mentioned to you Bruce Huvison, one of the lessons he taught me really on when things were really, really dark, and he said to you, he said, Brian, businesses don't fail, people quit.
Yeah.
And I learned that, and I listened to that and said, if I don't quit, my business won't fail. So I just got up every morning, went to work, and lo and behold, the sun came up the next day, and we went to work, and it started to grow. And as we grew, it became a little easier in some ways to grow our business. But like anybody in the very beginning, like most business in the very beginning, we were undercapitalized. We also didn't necessarily know exactly who we were or what we wanted to be. And so I had to work really hard on trying to figure out who was StormSmart, what is StormSmart, and where are we going. Now, we happened to be in the right place at the right time a few times, and we really worked hard to help change the building code so that impact protection was a part of the building code. And that certainly helped our business because it became required on all new construction. And we positioned ourselves to be a big part of that, being involved with the builders that we all know and those things there. And then, Hurricane Charlie came along, and we were just bringing the storm catcher to market, and that really aided in our a rocket ship that we created, and really just being in the right place. But it also came back to giving back and doing the right thing. And it was all part of the same story. And we were just very, very blessed in our business. And we did it. We were lucky enough that when the economy fell in 07, 08, we had recently taken on a big project in Cancun at a couple of hotels, major hotels in Cancun. So we spent the whole time when the economy was going bad here in the U.S., we took a whole bunch of our staff and we went to Mexico and spent about a year in Cancun protecting the houses. Yeah, it was a terrible place to spend a year. So we it was just getting up every morning and looking for opportunities and taking a chance and working hard and I think the lesson that we all kind of know and learn, the ones who are successful, is it's all about customer service.
Yeah.
And you really work really, really hard to take care of your customers. And if you take care of your customers, another saying that said, you take care of your customers, your business will take care of you. And so we worked really, really hard on having a zero tolerance to bad customer service. We just wouldn't consider it. We were going to make sure that customer was happy so that we could get their friends, their families to do business with them later. Later on, I learned that if you take care of your employees will take care of your customers, and your business will take care of you. And so that's how we grew our business. And I was really, really proud of the fact that over the years, over 62% of all the customers we dealt with at StormSmart was because we did somebody's brother, sister, cousin.
Yeah.
And it was all a referral-based business. And that's how you grow a business.
Yeah. Before you sold StormSmart, I mean, where were you? You weren't just located here in Lee County.
No.
You were all over the place.
Yeah, where
did you service?
Well, we had a small presence on the East Coast. We certainly were involved in Lee, Collier, Charlotte County. We did quite a bit of business up in Sarasota. Through our wholesale business, we did it all over the Southeast. We sold products to Guam. We sold products in Israel. We sold products in Cape Cod. We sold products in Long Island. We sold products all over, really, the world. We certainly did a lot of work in South America and Mexico. In those areas, we had a lot of presence in Cabo, Cancun, Cozumel, throughout those whole areas. So we really had sold products mostly in the Southeast U.S., but really all around the world.
How many employees before you left?
When I left, it was about 140 employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, it's almost 500.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a great success story. You mentioned the codes. When you say codes change, we put it into the building codes and everything like that. Is that when it happened around 2002?
Right. What happened was when Hurricane Andrew, prior to Hurricane Andrew, there wasn't a lot of knowledge, codes about window protection, hurricane protection, impact protection. That wasn't really thought of unless a storm came. Then everybody scrambled to do something. Andrew taught us that, we needed to do something a little different. So right after Andrew, 2 years after Andrew, they started to develop the Miami-Dade building code. And that took us to about 97, 98. And that's when that code took place, which was a little different. But around 2001, they really started moving towards the Florida building code, putting an impact standard into the Florida building code that required some kind of impact protection on all new construction within a coastal area and major remodeling. And that's really where it became serious. And that's really the code we still work with today. And honestly, it was such a great idea. Now, we spoke of the flood problem, and that's a little different. But to the best of my knowledge, there has never been a catastrophic failure of any new code built house in Florida.
Yeah.
And before that, we had a lot of failures.
Yeah.
And even you saw in Ian on Sanibel, those older generation homes didn't always do so well. But if you can protect the envelope of your house and your roof is designed in a pretty good manner, then chances are you can survive a storm as far as that goes. Now, water brings another feature into the whole deal. But so we were heavily involved in trying to do the science and engineering behind trying to change the codes to protect it, because the insurance companies basically required we all want to be in our houses after a storm, and you can only do that if you keep the roof on.
Yeah, I remember when they changed the code and people were trying to race to get their permit in,
Right.
so they didn't have to do the impact because it was going to cost so much more.
Right.
Well, now when you look back at those homes that were built, and even though the date, you would say, well, it's got to be impact. That's when they got their permit before, and
You know, there's a lesson to be learned there, because you're right. And that was a silly move, because in the end, those people probably bought hurricane protection in the end anyway. So it was much better to build it in. And yes, it did add some cost to a new home, but it also is offset by, in some cases, in most cases, by a little insurance savings. Also, in some cases, some energy savings and security savings. So there are some other features to it. But today, if you're living in the coastal area, you wouldn't consider not having some kind of hurricane protection. So now we come to the flood problem. And people are saying, well, you can't put flood barrier because it's going to drive the price and it's going to put builders out of business. It really is the same story they said before with impact standards. Yeah, it probably will increase the cost, but if done correctly, and we start to figure out ways to do it more economically, it's probably the smartest thing you do. I was working with some engineers from FGCU the other day, and a couple of inches of water in a house causes, on $1 million house, may cause $300,000 and $400,000 worth of damage. Yeah. Well, if you had to spend $40,000 on flood protection, which would be a very high number, but it saved you $300,000 worth of damage, would you have any doubt what you should do? And so we need to look at that. And people are hesitant about change, but sometimes change is better. And if you can figure out, well, it also creates some security or some other things that these flood barriers might be able to do. And, we're looking at an idea where it's not only a flood barrier, but maybe it's part of your hurricane protection products. And, there'll be innovation is an amazing thing. And with demand will come innovation. And so things will change, and maybe there'll be different products that aren't quite as expensive and are easier to do and all those things there. But we really have an obligation to each other that we need to make Southwest Florida a safer place.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time out in Sanibel during the recovery. We've all been involved in it, and I know you guys, as more as anybody, saw the devastation that was caused by Ian, Helene, and Milton, and in the trauma that all those people went through was just awful.
And still going through.
Correct. So things that we can do today that prevent that from happening in the future are just things that we just really have to look at. Yeah. And if it is financially feasible, then we should really do that. And because I don't think any of us believe that we're done with the flooding.
Yeah.
I mean, God, I pray that we don't have a hurricane anytime in the near future. I think that you're going to end up with flooding at times just from afternoon rainstorms, and you have 3 days of bad rain, and you're going to. So we need to figure out ways of making sure that doesn't become a long-term problem for us. And one of those ways is creating different flood barrier systems.
Yeah. Development does that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it needs to.
Yeah.
And we as builders, we need to be responsible for smart growth. I mean, everybody likes to beat up contractors and things like that, but if we show each other the ways to do smart growth and make this place safer, I mean, we figured out ways of solving the most of the hurricane flying debris problem. We are certainly working on ways to make our homes more energy efficient. There's certainly moves to making homes smarter. Well, now we've discovered in Southwest Florida that water is a problem, and we just need to figure out ways of doing that as well. And we will.
And if we do that, if we all do that,
right? Life is good. Yeah, right.
Life is good. And Southwest Florida's magical.
Right. Again, right. And it will be. And the storms were tough, and for a lot of people, they were very sad.
Yeah.
But Southwest Florida will come back. I always say, as long as I keep having winters up north, people are going to keep coming
down
here. And I said to you earlier, we talked earlier about how magical this place is. And so, yeah, a few days a week or a few days a year, there's some bad weather. But I don't know there's a place in the world that doesn't have some kind of bad weather. I personally I far prefer to live in a place where it has hurricanes than tornadoes. I kind of know a hurricane's coming. Sadly, you don't, and I've never lived through a tornado, but you don't really know whether it's coming or not. Yeah. And it comes pretty hard and pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
And
we're seeing that all over the news.
Right. And the fires and all these other things. So there's a risk in everything that we do in life. But if there's ways to mitigate that risk, then that's what I think we should do.
Yeah, that's what we got to do.
Yeah.
As StormSmart grew into one of the largest businesses of its kind in Florida, how did you stay grounded, and what did success mean to you at that time?
I like this question. There's one answer to that question is it's a word called Kim. My wife.
Your wife.
My wife did a good job of keeping me grounded. We are, and I have been, extremely blessed. But it didn't come overnight, and it didn't come easy. We worked very, very hard for years. I mean, Mike, you're a perfect example of this. If you think you're going to own a business that's going to be successful and is going to grow, and you're going to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then go fishing and golfing, all the other things, that just isn't
not
the
way
happen.
life.
Yeah, that's not the way life works. I will tell you, well, we owned that company for 26 years, and it was a great 26 years. But I don't know. I probably had, I don't know, a couple of days off in 26 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, even then, you're thinking about it. So I lived, eat, slept, breathed StormSmart for a long period of time. And there's nothing like hard work that it kind of grounds you. And yes, we were blessed in how it worked, but that didn't mean they were all good days. There were always good days and bad days. And when you're in business, and we were very, very lucky, and things were good, but there's a lot of things that go on that the economy, the different potential changes in the building code, different legislation that talks about growth and things like that. There were a lot of things that could have knocked us out of our way.
Yeah.
But we stayed focused on the customer service thing and building a business. And I was very, very, very blessed that we had a lot of great people who worked with us. You mentioned Jamie. I am not sure where my life would have been without her helping me and guiding me to be my partner in a lot of things that we did. And so you surround yourself with really, really great people and do that. But with people comes challenges. And people come and go. And when you're growing a company, you have to keep adding pieces together, and the pieces all fit well together. And it was a lot of challenges to it. I really just wanted to make our company successful, not for me and personally. I mean, it worked out that way. But I felt a tremendous amount of pressure with the number of families that we had in our organization. And I took paying them and helping them grow extremely seriously.
Yeah.
And so one of my biggest rewards is to watching them grow and them go up. I remember the first time we had 2 employees get married, and I remember the first time we had employees have kids together, and watching that go. And then eventually, towards the end, we had second generation of people that were in our company. Those were the things that really were the rewards to me, and those are the things that really made it important. We did okay financially, but it was really about increasing the quality of life, certainly not of just my family, which obviously is important, but all the families that were involved with us. And then watching Southwest Florida, because we couldn't be successful unless Southwest Florida was successful as well, because we were part of the economy. And so we had to make sure that the whole community was doing well. And luckily, we were in Southwest Florida when it was one of the fastest growing parts of the United States. And that made life a little easier for us. And the real estate values continue to improve. That made life a little easier for us. And so we all kind of grew together.
Yeah. No, I think that we've got a little team here at
Right.
in our office and where I'm at in my career. I really enjoy helping these young kids and seeing them grow and helping them, and that's what we're supposed to do. Mentors.
Absolutely. And you learned a long time ago that it's not you. I mean,
Yeah.
you can only be in so many places. You can only do so many things. If you want to scale a business, it can't be a one-man show. It takes a team.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more fun when it is a team. And when you raise all the whole group up, it's so much more important. It's so much more impressive to do that. And so that's the fun part of this whole thing. And yeah, I get to live a very, very amazing life. And I'm very happy and blessed that happened. But really, I'm more proud of all the other lives that we have helped to build and bridge. Again, when you saw people that got together while they worked for our company, start having families of their own and start buying houses and really start building lives. That's really when that's the most
fulfilling.
Yeah, that's the success part of the whole deal. It wasn't, I didn't have any problems paying my bills. Okay. But it was when I got to help others to do the same thing and saw their kids go to college and all the things that got to happen.
Yeah.
That's what was really the cool part.
Yeah. No I in team.
Right.
No I in team.
And you can't, you can, if you want to scale a business, you can't name a business that I'm aware of that's a one-man show.
Yeah.
And so it takes more than that to grow and be successful. And that's really what I was all about.
Yeah, that's great. After building such a successful business, you made a major shift toward philanthropy. You were always involved. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about the vision behind the Rist Family Foundation and what inspired you to start it?
When we were building our company, we were very fortunate, but it wasn't all easy. Along the way, when we were just starting to really grow our business, I got served papers from this company that said we were infringing on a patent that they created. And I knew that wasn't true, but we had to take it seriously. So we had to hire attorneys, and it got to be extremely expensive. And I spent 2.5 years of my life worried that I was involved in a patent case, and it cost millions of dollars, money we just didn't have. I could no longer really help innovate new products or in those things there. I was spending almost all my time fighting this lawsuit, and it went on for almost 3 years. And I remember one day when it was really, really, really bad, and I wasn't sure that we were going to prevail. I woke up one morning and we were living in Cape Coral, and I watched the morning news, and there was a story on the news about this woman who was taking care of her sick brother in Cape Coral, and they had run into tough times. And they had shut their water off because they didn't have any money to do that. So I knew some people at the TV station. I called them up and said, look, I don't want to be on TV. But can you tell me who this person is and where they live? And they did, and I went over to Cape Coral and gave this woman a check for, I think it was $157. And she just couldn't believe it, and that some stranger would give them money.
Yeah.
But I couldn't believe that we live in paradise, and no matter my problems, this woman didn't have money to didn't have water to brush her teeth or to, keep any of her electricity going on. And so we gave her the money, and it was just a great day, and she got her water on. It was very traumatic, but it was a great day. Later that same day, I remember going to a restaurant with my wife, and my phone rang, and it was my attorney, my patent attorney from Miami, and he said, "Hey, Brian, you sitting down?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm sitting down." And he said, "I didn't want to tell you this, but about 2 weeks ago, we found out that one of the claims that in this patent law case was false advertising. They were claiming we were using some of this information that we used in a picture on our website that was really theirs, which again wasn't true." And he said, "But we found out that false advertising is covered under your liability insurance. So now your insurance company has agreed to come in and pay you back for all the money you spent on lawyers so far, bring you all current, and pay for all your defense going forward." And so that meant, because really what these people were trying to do is they were trying to starve us to death, and they were just trying to paper us until we couldn't do it anymore. And that's what these patent trolls do.
Yeah.
And But now they weren't fighting me anymore. They were fighting the insurance company.
Yeah.
And so
That's a different story.
The case just turned around. Now, I'm not here to tell you that because I paid that woman's water bill in the morning, that's what happened at night. But I am telling you, things like that have happened to me multiple times in my life. And so from that day on, we just took a different turn.
Yeah.
And we started just being more involved in giving back.
Yeah.
And our life's never been better. And we just kept doing that. So that was really one of the many things that caused us to go in that direction.
Yeah, that's why when we said earlier, the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah, and it's very, very true.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing in the world. You think you and Mike, you said something earlier too. We're both involved in this. We do write some checks. But really, what really matters the most is your time and your effort and your caring and your support. That's really what most of these nonprofits need more than anything else. Yeah, they need money to keep the lights on and things like that.
Yeah.
No doubt. But really what people can do, because not everybody's in a position to, write a check for $10,000 or whatever that number is.
Yeah.
But what everybody can do is give a little bit of their time and help in the efforts. We spoke of Sandy Stillwell earlier. I'm telling you, that woman is at almost every nonprofit event.
Yeah.
And she's as busy as anybody I know. Yeah. And so for anybody can give 1 hour a month to go to help some kind of nonprofit, whatever one is your passion, because there's so many that are so important to so many, but so certainly there's one that means something to you or your family, and just try to help them, just support them. It isn't always about money. They just need help in whatever their causes are, and that's how you get started.
Someone like you that gives so much of your time, naturally money too, how do you decide which ones? I mean, I know you have with the kids and education and all that.
That unfortunately, that's one of the toughest parts because there are, this. I probably get approached, or Jamie and I get approached, 2 or 3 times a day about something. And they are all really great causes, but you can't help all of them. So you have to kind of make a decision. Are you going to give a little money to a lot of places, or are you going to give more money to a few? Yeah. That way you can hopefully move the needle a little bit more. So we've tried to narrow it down. We formed a few what's called pillars for our foundation, and one of them is the education's the biggest one, but veterans is another one, and the people who you need housing and children, things like that is another one. So we try to only evaluate ones that fit somewhere in those under those pillars, and try to do that, and just try to steer the other ones into someplace else that might be more geared towards them. We Again, I said to you earlier that we really, really believe that education is thing, and it's sort of like the teach the man fish story. I think that if we teach more people, we educate more people, then maybe we can have more people who can help solve these other problems. Yeah. And that's kind of our path to trying to solve this problem is educate more people. And so then maybe we do lessen crime. Maybe we help with the food problem. Maybe we help with the poverty problem. If we teach more people about different things, then hopefully through that work, they can all work on these other problems going forward.
Yeah, I learned that early on with Valerie's house and calling on people within the community and asking them to come in and trying to, get those people into the house. And one particular person I called a couple times, and I wasn't saying, could you give us money? Right. I just wanted the gentleman to come in. And he called me out of the blue. He hadn't returned my calls or my text, and I wasn't being a pest. And I know this gentleman, good man, and is given a lot to the community, and like you, is approached all the time. And he called me up, and I was on vacation, and I told my wife it was her birthday, and I said, I got to take this call. I've been trying to get a hold of this guy, and I had to step out of dinner and all that.
That makes her happy.
Yeah, right. But so I took the call, and he said, Mike, I've gotten your calls, but I'm getting approached by everybody, and they just want my money. And I said to the individual, I said, Joe, whatever his name was, I know his name. I said, I just wanted you to come in and see what we're about, because I know everybody's approaching you. I just wanted you to see what this is about and see if it fits. And little did I know, after that call, he called our CEO and founder, and he came in. And then probably a month later, on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, he found her he called her on that night, and he said, I got a check for you. And I think it was like $500,000.
Whoa, that's
and
a good day.
He turned it into being one of our biggest donors. But he also, not just giving money, he really got to know our program. Yeah. And he got it.
And honestly, if I could share that story with a lot of nonprofits, don't just come to me and ask me to write a check.
Money.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Tell me the story. Let me see the story and see if it resonates with me. Because, we all have hearts. They're all important things, no doubt. But certain things mean certain things to different people.
Yeah.
For you and your family, Valerie's house is just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And we've always been involved with Angela and Valerie's house as well.
Yeah.
But there are other things that mean more to me.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean Valerie's house is good or bad, but
yeah.
But at least go see it and show me your story. Don't just call me up and say, hey, can you write a check?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chances are I'm going to say no.
No.
But and we talked a lot about the university. I go out to the university and see the kids and see what's happening out there. And then you can't help but want to be involved in the whole thing. And so that really is the trick, is to get them to see what the mission is and see if that resonates with what they're trying to do and I'm trying to do. And then I'm much more willing to be more involved. And chances are, if I'm not willing to give my time, then I probably am not going to give much of my money either, because it just doesn't make sense. Doesn't mean your cause is not worthy or noble. It just means that it's not the same cause as I have.
Yeah. Well, education like that, and now you've found with like Valerie's house, our kids are growing and they're getting better.
Right.
And now they're going into the field, a lot of them, of mental health with what Valerie's house is about. Because Valerie's house, as you know, we work with kids and families that grieve over loss of a loved one. That's mental health.
Right.
And now they want to go into the field. And I know you just got involved with one of our kids with a scholarship.
Well, in reality, we've actually been involved with some of your kids for a little while because, lots of kids need help.
Yeah.
But some of these kids were dealt a pretty tough deck of cards.
Yeah.
And if they can come out of that poker game with a good attitude and a drive to be successful, and maybe to help solve the problem going forward, we want to be part of that. Yeah. And so we've created a program at FGCU's School of Entrepreneurship that we're giving scholarships to, and there's certain criteria they have to meet, but any person who was involved in Valerie's house and is going to go to the School of Entrepreneurship, we help fund their schooling in general.
That's great.
Now, that's mostly in the undergraduate level, but most recently, I was so impressed with one of the people that you have on your team, or Angela has on her team, however you want to look at it, and she wanted to go on to get her master's degree, and I thought she was absolutely a person on track to absolutely sustain the Valerie House mission, that we said we want to help that person go along. And so we're working through the details right now, and life gets complicated, but it sure looks like we're going to be helping her go get her master's degree so that she can go back and help kids that were experiencing the same problem she had a few years ago, and keep doing that so we can continue to build that family and make it stronger. So those are the kind of things that make you really, really proud. When you can see that cycle, and here's a kid who had a tough dealings for a while, get the best of it, and then go on and want to come back and help kids that had a similar experience. That's amazing.
That's when you know the program is working.
Right, exactly.
That's when you know the program is
perfect.
working.
That's when you go 360 and
Yeah.
say, okay, now we've got a formula here, and now it's working, and now it makes sense because this kid not only went through the program, but now wants to endorse and be part of the program. And that's really cool.
Yeah, and Valerie's House has done its time now where you're seeing a lot of those kids coming back.
Right.
Which is amazing.
You know, that's the only part that kind of is, and it's tremendous to see it, but it just kind of means we're getting a little older. And, you know, when you see these kids, you used to be a kid, now you're not a kid anymore. Now you have kids. And, you know.
Yeah, and that gal that you're helping, she's a great young lady.
Yeah.
She's a great young lady.
And, you know, I think that it's really, really important that we do things into the next generation. I mean, you know, I'm still very healthy, and I pray that it stays that way. But, you know, I don't want to continue to keep working this way forever. So it's important that we get that message across, all of us. And in this case, Angela gets the messages across, that Alexis goes on and continues that role. I think that's just an important part. We want to be able to pass the torch to a different thing. I mean, we see it in our industry. We see a lot of people in our industry whose sons are now running businesses that they started a long time ago. You know, one and done doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
You want it to be perpetuated. You want to be sustainable in the whole things you do.
Yeah, one of our friends, Mark Wiles, started with his dad, Wayne, and his grandfather, the Hesslers, and all that. And he's doing that with his son, Weston, and family. And, you know, just a great man and great company.
You see it in a lot of generations. I mean, there's some real estate people that are doing it with their next generation kids, and the builders. There's quite a few of them that are just going on to the next generation.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's really cool. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
What are some of the specific programs or causes that the Rist Family Foundation is currently involved in that you're especially proud of?
You know, we started a school about 6 years ago in Massachusetts. It was called the Rist Institute for Sustainability and Energy. We didn't put a lot of money in those things there, but it was a school at the University of Mass at Lowell that was about sustainability and teaching about different kinds of energy sources and just making the world a better place, a more environmentally friendly place. And it was one of those things that you didn't know what was going to happen. But it's now become one of the biggest or most successful schools for sustainability in the country. And we recently just signed an agreement with Florida Gulf Coast to help build and kind of model the sustainability program at UMass to something similar we're trying to do down here in Southwest Florida. You know, we don't have the right to destroy our ecology, and we don't have the right. We need to have clean water. For all kinds of reasons. And one of the ways that we're teaching sustainability is through the financial rewards of doing good, sustainable things, and the capitalist ideas you can come out of it. So we're trying to really grow our school of sustainability throughout the country. In the end, certainly Massachusetts and Florida now, and that I'm really proud of. And it wasn't something that, you know, we thought in the beginning this is what we're going to try to do. It's just something that kind of fell into place again, right time, right place, and it's growing. So we're working a lot with a lot of different individuals about sustainability, but we're doing it through an entrepreneurial kind of guide so that we can show people ways of being much more sustainable, build much more sustainable things, but make money doing it.
Yeah.
And that's really the trick. I mean, I think, like you, I don't believe the government's job is to fund all these things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think industry needs to fund it and businesses need to fund things. And so if we can show people how to make a cleaner, better, safer world, but also make money at the same time, I think that's a win-win. So that school of sustainability, both in Massachusetts and now that we're trying to start it down here in Florida Gulf Coast, is one of a lot of things that we're doing that I'm very proud of. And it's really difficult to say which one because there's a lot of cool things. I mean, the cybersecurity school we just did at FSW is really cool, and I just saw that they won first place in the state or something like that in cybersecurity. The entrepreneurial school at FGCU is just an amazing place.
We probably don't need cybersecurity, do we?
Nah, nothing like that.
Nothing like that.
I mean, nothing can happen bad with that. And those things there with all the AI tools and all those things there. Nothing can go wrong with that.
Yeah.
So there's things that, and so there's so many. I mean, we got involved in the respiratory therapy program at FSW. right in the middle of COVID. I mean, what could be more important than having respiratory therapy people in COVID?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's so many. So it's hard to say which one is the most important. I don't know. Sustainability is kind of cool.
What about why UMass?
I went to school there.
I thought I knew you were from Massachusetts, but
I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Massachusetts a long time ago. And then as our business was growing, I realized that if I wanted to continue growing my business, I had to continue to grow. So I went back and got my master's degree probably about 10 years ago, or started it about 10 years ago, probably got it about 5 years ago. And so I went back and got my master's degree so I could continue to grow my company. So I have 2 degrees from the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and so that's kind of where that. I don't know that I would be where I am today for many reasons, but one of them is because I went to college and learned some things. Now, do I think that you have to go to college to be successful? Absolutely not. Yeah. But for me, that taught me a lot of lessons. It gave me time to grow up in the way I needed to grow up, and made me a lot of the person I am today. So for that, I go back and we're still heavily involved in that school, and we've created a lot of programs up there as well.
So not only given to Southwest Florida, where you primarily live, but back to hometown where you came from, and you don't forget where you come from.
Right. Honestly, in reality, we've probably been more involved in the school in Massachusetts, even though we don't really live up there anymore. But it's what got me started.
Yeah.
So you're right. I don't forget that, and I would like to help it. And one thing that both FGCU and UMass Lowell have in common is they both take first-generation students, primarily, who come from tougher places, and they try to educate them. They're both state schools, and they're relatively lower cost schools, and so they go ahead and try to break that cycle. And so we're very, very supportive of that. Yeah. And I do spend quite a bit of time. I'll be up there in 2 weeks, and I do spend my summers up near there, and so I do a little teaching and lecturing up there as well. And again, you don't ever forget where you came from.
It's still wintertime up there.
Yeah, I saw that. I was speaking with them yesterday, and it was pouring rain and 40 degrees. I'm thinking, it's 100 here, and it's 40 there. That's crazy.
Well, you're going to get some great weather up there, I hope. You've had a huge impact on Florida Gulf Coast University from your involvement with the Davler
Kawanui
School of Entrepreneurship to support veteran programs and student mentorship. What drew you to the FGCU, and why has it become such a focus of your giving? We've talked a lot about FGCU, but the veteran part of it, I didn't really know that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a big community here in Southwest Florida.
Well, first of all,
veterans.
I don't know that you can ever say thank you enough to the veterans for all the things you do. I am not a veteran, but we've been involved in some veteran programs, and we couldn't live the life that we get to live if it wasn't for the sacrifices of all those people for all those years.
We can never forget that.
Right. And I think it's sometimes we do. Now, we're maybe doing a little better at it now than we were, but when we started with this program, it was at a time where I think I felt like they were getting beat up a little bit, a lot, and they certainly weren't appreciated. So we started to do a few things with the honor flight people and some different things and do it. And in fairness, I'll also tell you, when I was running our business, we tried to hire a lot of veterans because they were great employees, and they had great work habits and stuff. So there was a little selfish part of the whole thing too. But we were very, very involved with the veterans programs, and again, I just don't know that you can ever say thank you enough. But one of the things that did happen over the years and kind of got us involved in this is there always seems to be like these 3 silos. You have government, the schools, and business, and they don't seem to really work well together. Yeah. But yet we all need each other to do those things there. So we try to do things that kind of bring those silos closer together, and try to, the school has all these kids they're teaching. Maybe they're teaching the right thing, maybe they're not, but and then they have all these kids who want jobs. I was running a business that needed more employees to grow. And so what better place to get them than to be at the university? Yeah. So originally we would spend time at the university because then we would see who was the best and brightest.
Yeah.
And we would go looking for them and do those things there. And then the government spending all this money doing different things and creating policy that may or may not help the university or the business. And I think that becomes important, that we all kind of work together on those things.
Yeah.
So it was trying to break those silos or combine those silos and get them away from being silos and into stools so that we'd all work together to support something.
Yeah. Smart man. So thanks for tuning in to part 1 with Brian Rist on Let's Talk Southwest Florida podcast. You won't want to miss part 2. We're going to dive into Sanibel Island, the recovery after the storms, and giving back to Southwest Florida. Part 2 is going to be a special conversation. We'll see you then.